The consumer gets so nervous on real estate prices going up and down because they look at real estate as their home value. And that's one of the biggest assets that people have. And it's like, man, your home's not an asset. An asset pays you. It's a liability. And so when you look at real estate from a different light of being a cash flowing asset that gives you tax advantages and allows people to sleep in and have other people pay off debt, now it becomes a nice little tool to build some wealth. If you want proof, look at what BlackRock's been buying and all those hedge funds have been buying. I mean, they're not slowing down at all.
If you screw up on a flip and you do something wrong, if you buy it right, your margin of error is that much greater. So that's one thing, over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, I think I've gotten pretty good at is comping properties, negotiating properties down, and even in finding the properties is the key. Because if you get in a good property, it becomes a very competitive environment. If a wholesaler's got a property, selling it out to 20 people out there, it becomes competitive. So it's just trying to find those properties, whether through an agent or directly from the seller, under the radar.
Kevin, here's my bullish perspective on real estate. I believe in 30 years, people are still going to want to sleep inside. I think they're going to want to work inside. They're going to want to eat inside. I think real estate's going to be here to stay. That's just my opinion.
You have to have a goal or, a target, right? I want to be 9% body fat, or I want to be able to run a marathon. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? So what's the daily routine I have to have for that? And then when do I want to have it? I think it's the same thing with everything else. And I think that's including spirituality. So if you want to get a closer, better relationship with God, you don't crack the Bible. You don't go to church on Sunday and say, okay, I'm done. I'm with the church. I've done everything I need to do. I think it just has to be daily, consistent action, which is, in my case, it's, as Garrett calls it, it's word, wisdom, work, wealth. So it's reading scripture. What did you take from it? What actions can you take from it? And then how does that help you build wealth in your life? So it's just consistent daily action. One of the things I am very good at is being consistent in everything that I do, So, and I think that's probably been my biggest superpower throughout life, if in fact I have one, ability to remain consistent no matter what.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Cash Flow Conversations. Today I have a friend with me, Kevin Montagano, a serial entrepreneur who, like me, moved out of Michigan and into a warmer state that's a little more friendly with the taxation side. Kevin's from Michigan and now he lives in Florida. Serial entrepreneur. Kevin, it's good to have you here.
Great to be here, Matt. Thanks for inviting me.
So I've known you, dude, a decade, I think, since you guys started that restaurant up in Michigan.
Yeah, I think 2010 we met, right around that time.
Yeah, gosh, that's 14 years now. Holy smokes.
Yeah, no, time flies.
Yeah, we don't look a day older than when we met. That's the best part.
Maybe not. I don't know about that, but okay.
I think I have a little more gray hair than back then, but yeah.
I had more hair back
Kevin,
then, but yeah.
So Kevin's a serial entrepreneur, but didn't always start out that way. So everybody listening knows this podcast is all about how W-2 employees go on this journey to become an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs typically don't start out as trying to change the world. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. So I love interviewing people that look at the world differently, that are obsessed with how do we help other people, because that's how you bring value to the world, and eventually that's how you end up making money. So Kevin was not always an entrepreneur. You were in the corporate world for a while. Talk to me about that. What did you do back in the day?
I was in sales since out of college, went into sales and went into some various industries. I was in nutritional foods for a while, but my longest tenure in corporate sales was in tech. You're going back into, I'm dating myself, but into that throughout the 90s, I guess, mid 90s situation, back when stock options were real big. So, I was in technology sales. And one of the company I worked for was EMC. They were a data storage company. And at one point, they were the most successful company on the New York Stock Exchange. So at that time, everybody was just chasing stock options when they're in their career. So the compensation was one thing, but the stock options were another. So I think I worked for 4 or 5 companies throughout that period. I think it was about a 6 or 8 year period. And essentially none of the stock options that I ever received, you could line a birdcage with them. They just didn't turn out to have any value. So I never really liked working for anybody else anyway. So I said, man, I got to figure something out. I want to get out of here and do something on my own. So I just started researching businesses, and I knew some guys that were actually in the motorcycle dealership business that were killing it. And what I really wanted to do was be a car dealer. I mean, I've sold cars for a while out of college at the Varsity Ford and Varsity Lincoln Mercury, and with Mike Stanford, who's just a great guy, just tremendous people, great leaders, and just great business guys. So kind of talked to those guys about that. Their answer was simple: you don't have enough money, you don't have enough family to become a car dealer. So I'm like, well, the next best thing would be motorcycle dealerships. So there was a couple of guys that I knew that were having a lot of success in the motorcycle business. I mean, they were guys, about my age at the time, and I was probably in my mid 30s and mid to late 30s, and just crushing it. So I'm like, I can do that. So I had a friend who actually had just purchased a motorcycle dealership in a very rural town in Michigan called Ionia. And
Yeah.
I was kind of talking to him about it, and he's like, "Man, you should do it." So I circled back to the guys at Varsity. I said, "Hey, I don't open up a motorcycle dealership. If I did, would you guys be willing to participate financially?" And they're like, "Absolutely." I had a great relationship with them. So we were looking at putting a dealership in Novi, if you know where Varsity Lincoln is, right off of that Wixom Road area, not too far from it used to be the Wixom plant, right? So we
Uh-huh.
actually had a building there and everything, and we were going to get a Honda dealership in there. That was the intention. And they would have, Honda, I think, would have proved it easily. I mean, these guys are powerhouses in the industry and it would have been a good fit. Well, I was also we're talking to my friend, his name was Chris Shido, who had the dealership in Ionia. It was called Route 66 Power Sports. So he was kind of coaching me along as to what to do. Well, long story short, it was the Sunday before 9/11. Chris was a big motocross advocate. And when you own a dealership, he was real heavy in the motocross stuff. I was never heavy into it when I had the dealerships. But, you go to these races, you display your merchandise, all that kind of stuff. So there was a race in Portland, Michigan, and Chris had his bikes there and everything, and they slept in a motorhome. They laid these things out kind of like a campground format. Well, when Chris went to bed one night, people, it was hot out. People were running their generators and stuff. So he went to bed, and the guy next to him had a generator running. So he left his generator outside of Chris's camper. Chris had his AC on. So when he was sleeping that night, the carbon monoxide from the guy's generator came into his motorhome and killed him and his 12-year-old daughter. Of carbon monoxide asphyxiation.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty, yeah. So just a terrible story. I know I've told it so many times. I can get through it, but it used to be very difficult to talk about. Anyways, my wife actually introduced Chris and his wife. Her name was Jody. And during Chris's funeral, the period of Chris's funeral, Jody stayed at her house a lot. She's like, I know you were talking to Chris about starting a dealership, but I want nothing to do with this thing. So if you want it, here's a number I want if you want to buy it. Like, well, I don't know. I was living in, I think, Plymouth, Michigan at the time, driving to Ionia, long ride, plus a very rural, kind of a hick town at that time. Still is, but not as bad. Anyways, we ended up doing it, moving forward with it. I think I bought the business for 50 grand and real estate for $500,000. And she was able to move on. She actually moved down to Florida, of all places, after losing Chris and her daughter. And now I was a motorcycle dealer. So I had bought en route, kind of did it on my own for a couple of years, and it was a very grinding business, retail car dealerships, a lot of hours, a lot of moving parts. You've got sales, you've got parts and service, you have marketing, you have the back office. There was just a lot of stuff, and it was actually just kind of killing me after a couple of years. I'm like, I'm either selling this thing or I'm bringing in some people and helping me out. So I brought in two younger partners. One of them is still in the industry, very successful. The other one's out of it. But as I brought them in, we started rocking and rolling. Um, Actually ended up buying another dealership in Ohio. It's now called Octane Outlet. It used to be called Middletown Cycle. About 2 or 3 years after that one, and we were killing it, making a bunch of money. And around 2007, we had some problems with the manufacturers as far as manufacturer financing. That was when just after the banking crisis hit. So our biggest
Yeah.
lenders were HSBC and GE. Right. So, and they were two of the hardest banks that were hit during the subprime market mess. Okay. So when that happened, they really started clamping down on us. And we were the number one dealer in their district. Both stores were, but they shut off our manufacturer's financing. I guess our repossession rate was double the national average, but we were also selling, far more bikes than anybody else. So you kind of went from becoming, their favorite people to like the redhead stepchild that they wanted to hate. And they were just on us all the time, and just became a very contentious relationship. So, anyways, got sold the Route 66 business to a guy that subsequently went bankrupt in about a year. Kept the place in
Oof.
Ohio, which Aaron ran. Got bought out of that actually just a couple of years ago. But that kind of led me in my path of entrepreneurship. So when we had sold Route, I was the owner operator of that, and Aaron was the owner operator of Middletown. And I was going to Middletown twice a month, twice a week. Okay, so I'd go down Monday, Tuesday, and I was off the rest of the time. But just kind of you know not real fulfilled. And when you kind of have a lot of time on your hands and a little bit of money, it's kind of idle mind is a devil's playground type of thing. So I just was doing a lot of stuff that was not productive. So I said I got to figure out something to do, and that's kind of how the pound kind of became to fruition. I talked to another friend of mine who had been involved in a restaurant, and I said, we should look at something somewhere. He's like, all right, well, let's think about it. So we were actually, at the time, I was coaching Little League football in Brighton, and that's when Buffalo Wild Wings first opened.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right, remember how busy that one was off of out in Green Oak?
Oh yeah.
So I went up to the manager one day. I'm like, you guys are doing great. He goes, you're busy all the time. He goes, yeah, we're the second busiest Buffalo Wild Wings in the nation. I'm like, wow. So then from that, I called my buddy, Patrick, who and I said, hey, this Buffalo Wild Wings is the second busiest Buffalo Wild Wings in the nation. Let's open a sports bar in downtown Brighton. There's a demand. He's like, all right. So we were looking for a building, and this is when all the TARP money was being thrown at the banks, right? So you're going back now, I think it's like 2000 and probably 9 or 10 at this time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Michigan National, all the books were trying to, or all the banks are trying to write this bad debt off their books, right? So there was that where the pound is now. It used to be the Singer Press building, but it was vacant, and it was just a shitty little building that was sitting in a very good location in Brighton. And we put an offer in on it, and I think the bank wanted like 250 for it or something like that. And we put an offer on it, I think, for 210 or 215 or something like that. He goes, well, somebody's in front of you guys. We just got an offer for 230 or $235,000. We're going to go with that. And we weren't doing any financing. We were paying cash. So I said, okay, well, are they financing it? He goes, yeah, but they're good. They'll qualify for the loan. That's not a problem. So I'm like, all right. I go, well, what's it going to be? The guy said, well, it's going to be a Polish deli. I said, a Polish restaurant. They're not going to serve alcohol. And I started laughing at the guy. I'm like, okay, well, give me the guy's number now. I'll tell him to just go file bankruptcy and get this over with, right? So anyways, about a month later, 4 weeks, maybe less than that, 3 weeks later, they called us and go, hey, good news. The guy who was doing the Polish restaurant, his financing fell through, or we're not approving or whatever it is. So we'll go with your offer of 220 or whatever it is. I said, well, good. Our offer's 190,000 now. And right. So we ended up getting the building for about 205 grand. And from that, that's pretty much how the pound started. So
unbelievable. And then, so how did you end up meeting? Because our other mutual friend, Kyle, had a motorcycle business. You guys didn't meet through motorcycles.
No, just relationship. Actually, we were looking for investors for the pound. So, local guys that could, participate and add some value. And, I was introduced to Kyle through another guy that was in the pound at a very small level. He's not, but didn't end up staying into the deal, but he introduced me to Kyle.
I know who you're talking about. I think he owned a bar stool, maybe like the corner table or something.
You know exactly what I'm talking. I don't want to say his name.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, so he introduced me to Kyle, and Kyle had a lot of technology was really just taken off, I think, from my perspective, from a marketing perspective. So, and Kyle had a lot of savvy from a marketing perspective, and he and I hit it off. He became like a kid brother of mine, and we still talk all the time. But introduced to Kyle, and then there were some other people that came into the business as well. So.
I love it, dude. And the pound ended up, for people listening that not from Michigan, took off, had a 10-year run that was unprecedented in Brighton. That town needed it. People loved it. A lot of relationships were made there. I met my wife at the pound. That's
very good. I think I hired your wife. I hired your wife, so you owe me for that, right?
Yeah, Kyle and I were sitting at the bar making sure we weren't dehydrated, and she was the one serving drinks. And I talked her into hanging out with me long term. So thank you for starting the pound. It brought me and my family together. So that's pretty dope.
No, very well.
And then ended up exiting the pound, moving to Florida. I think did politics. People ask me why I moved to Tennessee, and the short answer is always weather and politics, because it was right after COVID. And Michigan shut down pretty hardcore with COVID, and they still have the same leader in that state that they had back then, who I can't
Right.
stand.
Mhm.
Did that influence you to move to Florida at all, or was it weather?
It did, but I mean, I think the Christmas before COVID, so it would have been 2019 December. At the time we had the Pound, the Cozy. Kyle and I had the medical marijuana dispensary, medical marijuana grow. I think Melissa had her hair salon, and we were on vacation actually down in Naples. And she pretty much said, we're walking down the street, and Melissa said, you know what? You're going to either be dead or we're going to get divorced because this just isn't working. At the time, we were just, we had, and I still had Middletown Psycho, still a partner in Middletown Psycho. So I think at that time, that summer of 19, I think I had like 123 employees with everything all together, between the Pound, the Cozy, her salon, the dealership, and probably the average age was probably about 23 years old. It might have been even
Mm.
younger than that. So it was a lot like herding cats. So she's like, we need to look at selling everything and moving to Florida. I want to move down here. I'm tired of Michigan. She hated the winters. She was over the whole, Brighton environment. She was from Plymouth. I was from Brighton House. I really liked it down there. She never really fully embraced Brighton. She liked it. It was a great place to raise a family, but she was ready for a change. And quite honestly, I was too. My tenure with the Pound, I went from being really on top of things to really just, as long as the numbers were fine, I didn't care about anything else. And that's kind of when it's time to go. I think when you're in the restaurant business. So um, then when COVID hit, we had already had the plans in motion. I had actually already had a buyer for the Pound prior to COVID without marketing it, without a broker. Um, and then when COVID hit, they kind of put that on a stall. But that did more or less accelerate our plans to get down here because, when Whitmer had everything closed down, the Pound was shuttered, the Cozy was shuttered, Salon was shuttered. I think the dispensary was still open because it was I can't remember the term, but it was a allowable business or necessary
Yeah.
business of necessity. I can't remember the term that they had for it.
Right.
But anyways, that was still open. But so, we had all the stuff that was closed. And I'm like, this is just ridiculous. It's time to move on and do something different. So COVID definitely accelerated that path.
Yeah, same for us. We were thinking about moving down, and then when that happened, it was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And now in Florida, you're doing a lot more with real estate. What kind of opportunities are you seeing in real estate right now? Are you buying in Florida or different states?
No, we're pretty much focused on Florida. So I moved down here. Kind of long story short on that too. I was going to be a partner in a multi-location title company. Well, that was my plan moving down here with Patrick's wife. And in the 11th hour, she clipped me from the deal. So we moved down here. We already bought a house. Melissa's actually already down here buying furniture, which it wasn't going to stop what I was doing anyways. But so I had to decide, what I wanted to do. So I'm like, oh, I'll go into real estate investment. And I went down. I purchased a property in an area called Lehigh Acres, which is kind of a lower end area outside of Fort Myers, and was going to do a flip on it. And was talking to a guy. He's like, "Hey, I can sell this thing to a hedge fund right now, and you make 30 grand." I'm like, "Do it." So he did, and that was within. I started doing this probably because I chilled out for a while. We got down in November, and I think didn't really do anything till the end of January. So like February, I started doing this, and I think we did this deal in March.
A lot of pool
And
days
so,
that winter.
what's that?
You had a lot of pool days that winter when you moved down there.
Yeah, there was a lot of relaxation. And at the same time, I was still trying to tie up the sale of the Pound. So there's trips back and forth to Michigan and got all that completed. So it wasn't like I was just sitting around doing nothing. Anyway, so found that kind of that niche and then was able to reverse engineer who the hedge fund was about the property. And so from that perspective, we just started targeting properties that hedge funds were looking for. As like a lot of private equity is buying, single family residential properties for rentals, whether it's, BlackRock, which, Invitation Homes is owned by BlackRock or Amherst. And I don't know who they're over. My own personal opinion is I think a lot of these little funds were just started and they all roll up to BlackRock in some capacity. It's just Blackstone or State Street. I think they're the big three. Then I think they're just these little funds are just purchasing arms for them under some sort of shell. But that's just my theory.
Really?
I think there's something to that. Yeah. So.
I mean, I
anyway, so that's Okay.
the consumer gets so nervous on real estate prices going up and down because they look at real estate as their home value, and that's one of the biggest assets that people have. And it's like, man, your home's not an asset. An asset pays you.
Right.
It's a liability. And so when you look
Right.
at real estate from a different light of being a cash flowing asset that gives you tax advantages and allows people to sleep in and have other people pay off debt, now it becomes a nice little tool to build some wealth. And that's why BlackRock, if you want proof, look at what BlackRock's been buying and all those hedge funds have been buying. I mean, they're not slowing down at all. They know that.
Yeah.
Here's Kevin. Here's my bullish perspective on real estate. I believe in 30 years, people are still going to want to sleep inside.
I think you're right. Yeah,
they're going to want to work inside. They're going to want to eat inside. I think real estate's going to be here to stay. That's just my opinion.
Okay, I think you're right. I think you're right. So, yeah.
So you're getting.
So, anyways, we did that. We focused. Go ahead.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
No, so we did that hard for a couple of years. That window kind of closed in July of 22. When interest rates started going up, the funds started slowing down. And though they're cash buyers, I think they do actually borrow the money, from what I understand. Maybe it's from one of their other funds or whoever they get the monies from to purchase the houses. So that kind of bottlenecked things for a while. So from that, then I went to focusing, which I'm doing now, is on flipping properties. We will still, buy some and sell some of the hedge funds or put them under contract and sell them to funds. But a lot of the funds that pulled out are going on pause in Florida. And I think they were on just such a buying frenzy for a period of time. It came down to they bought more than they could actually rehab. So I think they're just trying to get them rehab, get them rented, and then they will load up again. But I mean, if you look at the capital, like BlackRock has raised, I can't remember the name of the fund, but they opened the fund up maybe a year and a half ago, and within 6 months it was closed, and it had just a ridiculous amount of billions of dollars in it, and its focus is going to be purchasing single family residential. So when they do open the floodgates again, it'll just be crazy, and as they put it, because I still talk to the reps a lot, their big term now with the hedge fund is, there's a lot of dry powder. I'm sure you've heard that term. Dry powder on the sidelines is what that's like the buzzword if you're cool in a hedge fund. So they talk about that a lot. So I think that opportunity will come back, but right now it's kind of gone for the moment.
So you're not doing much commercial or multifamily. You still like the single family. So right now, if you're flipping a house, how long are you holding it, and what kind of profit do you see yourself making?
We're trying to get in and out as quickly as possible. We're from time of purchase to sale ideally is 90 to 120 days. But I mean, we've got one on the market right now. Actually, Kyle's involved in it with me. We purchased it, I think, in May, and we're still on the market. We're just listed probably about 6 weeks ago. The problem is we were 6 weeks late on getting it to market because the windows that we ordered came in late, and then we had back-to-back hurricanes. And the house, we were very, 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 very fortunate because the house that we bought, and it's in a really exclusive area of St. Petersburg called Pink Street. And it's like all these houses around us have shit all over their yards and everything, and ours, nothing happened. It's just like the pool got dirty. It didn't flood. We did lose. I mean, the water did come into the yard, and we did lose like a row of shrubs, but there was no damage to the house. The pool pump made it. So it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things. So, but people have still. I think there's definitely a bit of hurricane fatigue going on still, and it has impacted the market down here. And I think the elections have helped. That was the other thing too. The hurricanes and people waiting for the elections, which, obviously, I think the elections were very favorable for most people. I think most people, at least that I hang out with, would see it that way. So
agree. Let's talk about that at the end, though.
What's that?
We'll talk about the politics at the end because I know you don't lack an opinion, nor do I. So that'll be a fun one. So really quickly, so you're going to hold a house, then May sell it by end of the year. You might hold it for not 10 months. What type of margin?
That's not the ideal situation, though. You know what I mean? Ideally, you want to be out of it in 120 days, but it's a higher end house, so I think those should be 4 to 5 months in a perfect world. This one's going to be, I don't know. We bought it in May. One second, let me turn the phone on. We bought it in May, and we were hoping to be out of it by now, and we probably would have been under contract and maybe even sold had the hurricanes not have happened.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate. So because you're paying, we're using cash and hard money loans for this, so we're paying $5,000 a month in interest on this. So holding it and not selling it is no good for anybody except the bank.
Yeah. Agreed. You're using hard money loans. Wow. What are the rates for those right now? 12?
No, there's some good lenders out there in this space. There's a couple national lenders that are pretty good, and if you have good credit, good experience, you can get under 10 right now. And maybe some of them were as low as 7. So it's about experience and credit.
Have you ever heard of, I'm looking something up here really quick.
Sure.
Gosh, a friend of mine started a hard money lending group where investors and lenders come together. And I'll send it to you after this podcast. I'll put a link in the description for everybody listening too. But it's a
Okay.
private money club. It's called Private Money Club. So that might be something worth looking into.
I think I
Because
might have
hard money,
met that guy at Fund Launch. Was that guy at Fund Launch?
he could have been. He's not super tall. Usually wears a hat.
I
Snowboarder
literally
from
think I sat next to this guy in a bar one night, and I think that was the name of his company. I've got his card somewhere.
yeah.
But it was essentially a portal. We were marrying people that had projects with lenders, and was that it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what
Okay.
it is. He had to go through a lot of stuff with the SEC and get everything approved, but it's all above
Hmm.
board. They're
Yeah.
advertising everywhere, and they're doing a lot of business now. Because a lot of the guys that were doing real estate flips back in the day or holding long term got sick of managing the tenants. And then when you outsource all of that, then it just eats into margins. He goes, I can lend hard money at 10%, and I don't have anybody to worry about changing a toilet or making sure rent comes in. It's just a loan, and then I have a lot of the collateral, so it's much less involvement for the entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, when you say like changing the toilet and stuff for a tenant, that's more of a buy and hold strategy, which I don't do. I don't have any rental properties right now. And you also mentioned multifamily earlier. That's a space I do want to get into. So if I do want to do a buy and hold strategy, it's certainly not going to be single family. It will be multifamily, but those are those are deals you do with a group or syndication with
Yeah,
them. But I would want to be on the front of it. I would not want to be just an investor. It'd be a deal I'd want to find and then offer to people. So I'm just trying to kind of build up my skill set on that. And the biggest skill set in this industry, in my opinion, is acquisitions. Right? If you can find the deals and find them at the right price, you're going to make money. Even if
agreed.
you screw up a lot.
Agreed.
And the same thing. I'm like, yeah. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I mean, even if you screw up on a flip and you do something wrong, if you buy it right, your margin of error is that much greater. So that's one thing, over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, I think I've gotten pretty good at is comping properties, negotiating properties down, and even in finding them. Finding the properties is the key because if you get in a good property, it becomes a very competitive environment. If a wholesaler's got a property, he's selling it out to 20 people out there, it becomes competitive. So it's just trying to find those properties, whether through an agent or directly from the seller, under the radar.
Yeah, and it's even more important now with higher interest rates than it was 5, 6 years ago. When the money was super cheap, it was a lot more forgiving if you didn't get into a great deal.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when rates were 2, 3%, and you probably have that on your current house. I'm assuming one of those ridiculously good rates. You could get a house and put it on the market, and you'd have 5 offers in a day. That's not the market right now, though. It's definitely it's gone from a seller's market to a buyer's market.
Yeah.
Even in Florida.
Well, now we have a new government stepping in next year. I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of the entrepreneurs out there who like to invest.
Hmm.
Savers don't help the economy. The people who save money in Wall Street are not helping the economy. And if you want proof, the
Right.
IRS doesn't even incentivize it, right? They penalize savings in a savings account. They force income taxes on a lot of the retirees who are forced to take money out of retirement accounts, and they incentivize entrepreneurs, real estate investors, business owners through tax incentives. So I think if you look at what's going to happen next year, I'm interested to see how this plays out, but I think you're going to see a lot of that dry powder get deployed. I think next year, real estate's going to go up. I don't see it going down. 12 of the
I agree.
last 14 elections, the year after the election, the housing market has gone up in value. 12 of the last 14 elections.
I believe that. I believe that for sure. So
Oh, you paused. Yeah.
is it me
So
or
I think
you?
it's a good market to be in. And another thing is, there's only, I think it was you, but we're good now. Another thing is that there's only so much coastline, whether it's Michigan lake frontage or Florida oceanfront property. People are still going to want to go to
Mhm.
Florida in the wintertime. It's not going to go away.
Right. Right. I agree.
So, where do you see yourself going from here? Do you like the real estate game? Would you ever get back into motorcycles or the restaurant business? The restaurant business to me is so hard. Gosh, you're dealing with a lot of things that you can't
Yeah.
control.
That'd be a no and a no. I think I've got an opportunity to get involved in a motorcycle deal. I get motorcycle dealership deals kind of thrown at me all the time by guys that want to get into it. And to get approved by a dealership, you either need experience in it or just meet a certain criteria. So there's guys that have worked for me or with me over the years that are searching for dealerships and invite me in all the time. But it's a very time intense industry. I mean, it's retail, right? So you got to be there. So that I definitely have no interest in that, and I have absolutely no interest in the restaurant or bar industry at all at this point in my life. So
Yeah,
that ship
just
has
not
sailed.
fun. Is it not
It's
fulfilling?
just a
Not fun?
grind.
It's what?
It's it, it can be fulfilling. I mean, the pound was a lot of fun for a while, right? I probably should have sold the pound after my kids had graduated from high school, because one of the driving factors for me was, be a community centric bar restaurant. We could support the community. My kids were at Brighton High School, so that was a lot of fun. And I think when my son graduated, I kind of lost interest in it. I got tired. I mean, owning a restaurant, I mean, you see a lot of different types of people, and it's just how cheap people can be and how big of assholes they can be. It's just at a whole nother level when you're in a restaurant or a bar. So that's just something I definitely could not stomach at this point in my life.
Yeah. So stick with the real estate stuff, buildings, a little less people management.
Yeah, real estate, other investments, I'm open to as well. I'm not going to be just specifically a real estate investor. Just I call myself an investor. Real estate's definitely what I do right now, but I'm open to a lot of things. But
So
not bars and restaurants, and not dealerships.
yeah, I get it. So let's talk about your journey as a man, as an entrepreneur, as a family man,
Sure.
because I feel like you've gone through some epiphanies in the last 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
that more so that's outside of business that influence business decisions, but
Mhm.
help you be more present. Talk to me about some of those revelations that you've had. And I know you're a part of Garrett White's group, Wake Up Warrior, back when that started, right? You were one of
Yep.
the first guys in there.
Yeah, it was back in I think October of 2015. I went to Warrior Week and participated in Warrior Week 24, and I've been in and out of Warrior since then. I'm actually in it at a very small level right now, but still plugged into it. And I'm on a call with Garrett once a week with a group of people. But that was definitely a life changing event for me. That was I think that was just a perfect timing for me. It was like something I'd never seen before. It was kind of midlife crisis time for me. I just kind of hit a point where I was just incredibly bored with everything I was doing and just was looking to, I don't know, just self-destruct. Essentially would have been a good word for what I was trying to do. But I think it happens to guys. It happens to entrepreneurs a lot. You work so much and then you're like, what the hell am I doing? Nothing's really fulfilling to me. And I found Garrett, and it's interesting. I'll tell you the story because it's kind of funny. But Melissa and I were having some marital problems. Business was business. It was what it was. So I was actually living upstairs in our house for like a week because we were fighting, and I had insomnia. I was having problems sleeping, and so one of my kitchen guys, like you own a restaurant, your kitchen guys, there's a certain culture back there, and they all smoke a lot of pot, right? So I needed something. I needed something to sleep. So one of the guys in the kitchen got me some marijuana, and I don't really smoke marijuana. I don't do well on it, but whatever. So he gave me some weed and a pipe, and I hit this pipe on my daughter's room, smoking it, blowing the smoke out the window of my daughter's room. She's off to school at Michigan State, and I don't want my wife to smell it, throughout the house. And I popped up my laptop, man, and it was, I guess, Facebook, and there was a feed, and it was Garrett White, and I'm like, this guy seems pretty cool. I clicked on it, and it's like a 3-hour movie I watched that night. And it was just captivating. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call these guys. So I call them the next day,
Wow.
and I'm interested in what you got. And I think it was, 10 days later, I was off to Warrior Week in Laguna Beach, California, getting the shit beat out of me for 7 days.
Dude, how fun is that? That's cool. So,
It,
and you met
it
some
was
cool
life
people.
changing.
I've had people in Franklin come up to me and say, "Hey, do you know Kevin Montagano?" And I'm like, "How the hell do you know me?" And they apparently saw us together back in the day. So you get to meet some really cool people in that whole program.
There are some very high level people in Warrior. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have turned, just done some really big things. And some guys have stayed in, plugged in. Other guys like myself have come in and out. But Garrett's gone through an evolution as well, where Warrior used to be one thing, and it still follows the same principles that it started with. But he's really gone down a spiritual path, which I really have embraced as well, with Warrior. And he's actually the call I'm on with him once a week is Warriors for Christ. So he's kind of taken the concepts of warrior and the reading of the scripture and injecting it into just the way of life, kind of blending the two together. And it's interesting. There's a Bible that was just produced by a guy named Nick Leonis. Do you know who that is by chance?
I don't think I do.
So Nick Leonis was a former hedge fund manager, and kind of like a lot of guys, creates a lot of wealth and just feels very unfulfilled. So over a period of 100 days, I think he read the Bible for like 16, 18 hours a day. Okay. And read the entire thing. And he felt there's a way that he can incorporate the Bible into business and wealth creation. So he created a Bible called the Business Bible. You can find it at businessbible.com. And it's a great book. Whoops, it's falling out. It's a great version of the Bible. It's got everything in there, but I mean, they've got case studies in there. He's got other stories in there about various parts of the Bible. And I think Garrett's actually coming out with one that's going to be Business, Warrior, and the Bible, I think, the first quarter of next year or so. So that's kind of the path that Garrett's gone on with Warrior, and he's crushing it. I don't know if you've seen him lately. He just sold his house in Laguna, I think, for 28 mil. He bought it for 20, 4 or 5 years ago. And then he and his wife, Danielle, who's also an ultra successful entrepreneur, she has DKNW Styling Studios and all that stuff. They're moving to Miami, I think, the first of the year. And they bought, I don't know how much the house is, but it's on the water and it is sweet. So
I'm sure it's not cheap. Yeah, it's fun to watch the success, and it's fun to see the hate that people can get too when you watch someone who follows their passion. So many people just come out of the woodworks to say how bad it is. I'm glad that I'm glad to see them incorporate Christ in their messaging. Um, we've had a lot of things in our family happen in the last year, 2 years that you just can't control, And as a man
right.
who our job is to provide for the family. You can do a good job. You might not be fulfilled at the end of the day. And there's a saying in this in a movie. Do you remember the movie Bruce Almighty?
I do, with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, the second one is
Yeah.
Noah Almighty or something. And the wife is getting frustrated, and then they leave, and she goes to the parents, takes the kids, and God shows up as like the busboy at the restaurant, and he said, if you pray for your family to come together, do you think your family is just going to come together, or do you think God's going to give you an opportunity to bring your family together? If you pay for fulfillment, do you think He's just going to make you fulfilled? If you pray for companionship with your partner, you think He's going to make you fall in love, or do you think He's going to give you an opportunity to fall back in love? And it was like that epiphany for her. And man, it's like the hardest lessons you learn that you can't control. All you have is faith.
Right. 100%. 100%.
So it's good to see that. I've kind of been on a journey too of, opening up that relationship and talking to somebody. The world's not all about me. It's not all about you. The world will continue long after we're gone. It's humbling and I think reassuring at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it's good to see you on that journey too, man.
No, it's something to love for me. It's kind of always been there in my life, but if for some reason I've chosen not to embrace it, and grew up Catholic. I'm Italian, started out in Detroit. So it was the whole Roman Catholic Church, which as a little kid, I always thought church was scary. Then we went to catechism and Catholic Church. I was probably well advised. I think it was scary, right? Because of all the stuff that's come out about it. but then we moved. I mean, true. Um, so then we moved out of Detroit and we went to Livingston County and home, and we just kind of got out of the whole church thing and never really kind of got back into it. But there was always kind of a need for spirituality, and I think over the last year and a half I've embraced it. And then now that Garrett's kind of has amped it up, kind of working with him and his group on it, it's just and it's cool too because you sit you're there with 50 high level entrepreneurs and you're essentially doing a Bible study. You know what I mean? So you read a scripture of the Bible and you kind of translate it and how that relates to your life. And your translation is going to be far different than mine because it depends on where you're at in your current life. You might read a scripture and have a totally different meaning than I will because we're at different spots in our life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that to me that's powerful. And I think reading the Bible every day, we're able to learn something about ourselves and also kind of give us a sense of comfort. Because let's face it, what we do is really hard, right? I mean, we're entrepreneurs. We're not getting a check this Friday, come in the mail or deposit into your account. So if we can kind of take the stress and the anxiety off of us and know that we're not alone, and I think that's the hardest thing to understand if you've been an entrepreneur or an alpha male for a long period of life, that this isn't all upon you. You share this with God, and if you put God first, then it'll relieve a lot of that pressure, from you. But you have to have the key. You have to trust and have faith, and you have to be consistent. I think as far as spirituality, it's like everything else. And I always use the phrase, like your body is your greatest teacher, right? So, if you take all the principles it takes to getting an elite physical condition and you apply those principles to every other area of life, you're going to have success. Because you want to get in great shape, right? What's the first thing you have to do? You have to have a goal or a target, right? I want to be 9% body fat, or I want to be able to run a marathon, or whatever it might be, right? And then it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? So, what's the daily routine I have to have for that? And then when do I want to have it? I think it's the same thing with everything else, and I think that's including spirituality. So if you want to get a closer, better relationship with God, you don't crack the Bible. You don't go to church on Sunday and say, okay, I'm done. I went to church. I've done everything I need to do. I think this has to be daily, consistent action, which is, in my case, it's as Garrett calls it, it's word, wisdom, work, wealth. So it's reading scripture. What did you take from it? What actions can you take from it? And then how does that help you build wealth in your life? And not just wealth financially, but wealth in other areas of your life, your marriage, your relationship with Stephanie, your kids, whatever it might be. So it's just consistent daily action. And that's one thing, I'm definitely not the smartest person or the most talented person. One of the things I am very good at is being consistent in everything that I do. So, and I think that's probably been my biggest superpower throughout life. If in fact I have one, is just my ability to remain consistent no matter what.
Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, there's very little cheerleaders in your corner saying, go do it. There's no one cheerleading for you to go to the gym. There's no one cheerleading for you to talk to God other than our conscience.
Right. But you have to be disciplined. You got to get up early and get it done. So,
Kevin, this has been good, bro. I'm so glad to see you continue your journey with Christ.
You as well.
It's something that I'm bringing into the family on a daily basis.
Good.
So that did not exist.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I did not have it with my kids. I mean, I didn't have it with my kids. It wasn't a big part of our lives. And, we were working, 6 days a week. And the seventh day, quite honestly, for me was relaxation and partying. It really
Bro,
was.
100%, man. That Sunday comes around, I don't want to do anything. We didn't want to go to church. The girls were just hanging out at the house. But then someone said something once that just kind of hit me upside the head. They're like, you don't have to go to church to talk to God. And I thought, man, that's right. I'm putting this off like church is going to be the answer. It's not. And that was the beginning of the epiphany for me.
I'm not a big advocate of churches. Maybe I will be, but the other thing too, though, I mean, this is 2024, man. You can find a good stream, and if you find a guy that you like, I follow this guy Tulian out of West Palm, and he runs a church called the Sanctuary. And at 10:30 on Sundays, I can stream him right to my TV, and listen to his thing, and it's cool. It's convenient, and it's more uplifting than me going to a church. And I think a lot of people go to church too because it's like a social thing for them. And if it is, and it works for them, that's great. I'm not there. I don't want that. My circle is small, and it's designed to be small. I don't need to have 100 friends and be involved in all this stuff. It's just not me anymore. So I just prefer a small circle and
And I'm
a
less
strong
interested in
connection
the
with God.
exactly. That's what it's about. I'm less interested in the facade of being a person and more interested in being the person. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people that go to church
Absolutely.
and then they kind of wear that as the badge, and then you know stuff about them, and you're like,
Yeah, and,
you
you hit that so
there.
much on the head. It's like this guy goes to church. This guy, okay, goes to church, and you find out, okay, he's having an affair with this guy's wife who also goes to the church. You know what I mean? Or this guy, his son's facing addiction, and he's chosen to just neglect it or act like it's not going on. So
Right.
church doesn't make you fucking holy. It really doesn't make you holy. Your connection with God makes you holy, and everybody's connection may look a little bit different. So.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for hanging out, dude. It's been too long since seeing you. Last time I saw you, I just remembered was before COVID. It was that February, like a week or a month before everything shut down down in Florida. We were at that one resort, and you came over and hung out for a day.
Yeah.
Um, Before we let you go, for everybody listening that's an entrepreneur, and you told a lot of stories of your journey, what do you think? What would you have to say to somebody who's getting started, who doesn't have the cheerleader, who questions it, who's people who they're surrounded with, who love them or are not saying go take risk on yourself. They're saying please play it safe, and they're kind of going against the grain of what they're being told based on what they want to achieve. What do you tell a newer entrepreneur on how to be successful?
Commitment. I think commitment's the biggest thing. Just like a marriage, right? I think the biggest thing to a successful marriage is commitment because there's going to be highs and lows, peaks and valleys, good and bad. In entrepreneurship is much like it, but you have to stay committed to the course. You don't stay committed to the target, the goal, maybe not the actual process of getting there because that can change through time. Things evolve, technology, whatever it may be, but you have to have a high level of commitment for what you're after, or you're going to fail. Because I mean, things are going to go wrong, and if your commitment is like, yeah, I kind of want to do this, or letting people kind of knock you off course, you're going to stop. So
Yeah.
if you don't have a 1,010% commitment to it, don't even start doing it.
Yep. So to build on what you just said, commitment and it's but not falling in love with the process because the process, not maybe, it will change. Things will change. Things will get in
Sure.
your way. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to pivot. It's like a marriage. The person you married is not
100%.
the person you're married to today. You decide to get married and then you decide to stay married at some point. And then that decision
Mm-hmm.
happens over and over again. And the world is different every time. So the person that we are with is still different. I'm different than when we met, right? So the
Sure.
the the ultimate goal is being consistent towards the ultimate goal, knowing that it's not a straight line to success. I think is what you said.
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here, brother. Go ahead and stay on. Don't log off. But it was great having you here, and
Okay.
I'll send you a link when this stuff goes live, so you can show all your friends and stuff. And if somebody wants to learn more about Kevin, where can they go? Do you have any websites or anything about what you do, or you're pretty quiet guy, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I have an Instagram page, but it's just a personal page and a Facebook page. But I had a company website. We were doing some stuff with the fonts, but I don't have that up anymore either. So yeah, right now I'm just kind of running incognito.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to go see Kevin with his shirt off smoking a cigar by the pool, we'll put up his Instagram
Yeah.
handle so they can check it out. All right, Kevin. Thanks, brother.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.